After more than 5 decades, Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan is in Russia on what officials are calling a historic state visit. The trip comes at a time when relations between Tanzania and some Western nations have become increasingly strained, following criticism over its handling of human rights issues. President Samia and her counterpart, President Putin, are expected to hold talks on trade, investment, energy, and broader bilateral cooperation, while also attending the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. The visit is being closely watched as Russia seeks to expand its influence across Africa. Here's what Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu had to say.
This is a chance when we have time to discuss the forthcoming development for our countries. But before that, I must thank Russia for the greater contribution which they provided during the African liberation.
So what does this trip mean for Tanzania? And could it signal a shift in the country's diplomatic priorities? Well, I spoke to Nicodemus Minde, a professor of international relations, and asked him how the visit has been received in Tanzania.
On one hand, from a foreign policy perspective and a state-led lens, it's seen that it advances Tanzania's foreign policy outlook in terms of a more partnership, global partnership in terms of trade, investments, and other forms of bilateral engagements. But also, on the other hand, it is also been criticized because it comes at a time when Tanzania is trying to gain international leverage after seemingly a Western backlash following the disputed 2025 elections, which were followed by violence.
Does this visit signal a shift in Tanzania's foreign policy, or is it part of efforts to balance relations with major global powers?
I would not call it a shift in Tanzania's foreign policy because traditionally Tanzania's foreign policy has been what we call a non-alignment foreign policy. But I see the visit largely in terms of its timing and the symbolisms that come with President Samia's visit to Moscow.
How much is this trip influenced by tensions that we've seen from some Western powers, especially since the 2025 elections?
Well, Tanzania's relations with the Western powers has been strained in the past few months. You can recall that the United States government reissued sanctions against a Tanzanian security official with regard to human rights violations and records that followed the 2025 elections, but also the European Union was also denied entry into the country in terms of its attempt to do investigations following the 2025 elections. So you can see it has somewhat what we call strained relations with Western powers. So this visit is significant in the sense now it wants to broaden and leverage its foreign policy beyond these Western powers.
So what does Russia stand to gain from closer ties with Tanzania?
Well, I think this is part of a broader Russian approach towards reaching countries beyond Europe and its other global powers because of the supposed international isolation that it has faced. So Tanzania fits this particular matrix in terms of an African country that it can now really broaden its diplomatic engagement beyond Western isolationism.
So are there any practical benefits that Tanzania could get from this visit beyond the symbolism?
Well, the way the government has framed the state visit in terms of economic partnership and increased bilateral engagements, especially on areas such as trade, investment, educational opportunities, science and technological exchanges. So going by this state framing of the state visit, therefore we can say Tanzania stands to benefit from this engagement. Part of the entourage is Tanzanian ministers who are in charge of trade, investment, and other sectoral ministries such as agriculture and the like. So, and of course, it is also been framed to also be in line with Tanzania's Vision 2050, which is the new economic blueprint for the country.